Thank you, Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community, which is on Zoom every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And we have a special guest, Diana Ash, coming to us from Paris, France. Diana, please share with us who you are and tell us your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Just so you know a little bit about my story. So yes, I am currently in Paris, France. I spent half a year here, but I'm originally from Canada, the capital, Ottawa area. And back in 2019, when I was 33 years old, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So I am a two-time ovarian cancer survivor. I had a reoccurrence within that first year. And I'm going to be hitting the five-year mark in June. Not June, sorry. In the end of March is when I'm going to be at the 5 years. So almost there, counting the last few weeks to get there. I know it's a big milestone for many of you who are in this cancer world. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to be here and to chat a little bit about my story with you. And Mark, thanks again for having me on here. So as Mark mentioned, I'm a big traveler. I'm living in Paris. I've written a book. It's called Take Back Your Power. The subtitle of it is A Guide for Young Women with Cancer. And yes, that is mainly my target audience, just because when I was diagnosed, as I mentioned, I was 33 years old. I was in a stage in my life where everything seemed to be going well. Everything was finally aligning. I was working the job that I wanted. I was financially stable. I was traveling. Everything was aligned to where I had worked so hard for it to be until that dreaded day where I got the cancer diagnosis, which totally, took me off guard and derailed basically my life path for a period of 2 years of going through treatments, going through surgery, chemotherapy, and then some fertility treatments through that as well too. So I wanted to create this book, which is really a guide based on my experience, what I've learned through it, to help young women that are going through a similar situation that don't necessarily know what to expect, that are living a different reality than most people their age. I found myself very isolated to a certain extent until I found groups such as this to be able to join and connect with our cancer patients. But initially, it was a very lonely journey. It was really unpredictable. I didn't know where to get answers, and I just wanted to create something for individuals to feel less alone going through that. So that was my mission. It was to have something tangible to give to others, to pay it back. Also to raise awareness. I know that in terms of ovarian cancer, it's one of these cancers that unfortunately gets diagnosed too late. In many instances, I find that the treatments that we have for it haven't advanced based on the stats that we look over the last 50 years. There hasn't been any improvement in terms of survival rates or any kind of the treatment. So I really wanted to put it on the radar to say that this is also get it to the extent of where breast cancer is right now. Like I just love following what the women have done for breast cancer, bringing it to the limelight and like really showcasing it. And it's raised so much awareness. Even the Eiffel Tower here, the 1st of October, they light it up in pink. The whole city's in pink, and it's just that type of awareness to be able to bring that for ovarian cancer was really important to me. And I'm really big on self-advocacy. I had to advocate for myself incredibly. They kept telling me everything was fine, that, I should just go back home, give it a few days. And all my symptoms were consistently brushed off until I had to push. I had to be extremely aggressive. So part of my message is that I want women to not ignore the signs of discomfort. I think we're extremely resilient to pain as human beings. We tend to brush things off, telling ourselves it's going to be okay. And sometimes it's better to get it checked earlier on to know what it is that we're being faced with, right? Even though it's not necessarily the message we want to hear, I think when you know the enemy that you're dealing with, you can be better equipped to face those challenges. So self-advocacy is really important for me. And I talk a lot about resilience. The human body, the human mind, the human spirit is just incredibly strong. And, we rise above so many challenges. And everybody on this Zoom right now, I don't need to explain this to you. You guys are living through this, but you see your strength through your adversity, through the challenges that you go through life. And it's not always easy. We can't choose our circumstances. We can't choose what happens to us. But we have so many choices in terms of, how we wish to take the situation that we're in and how we choose to live it in that moment. So that's where I really focus a lot on the narrative that we choose to tell our story. Because, everybody could be going through a story, but people could have different versions of that story, and it's all based on how you perceive it, on how you see it. Uh, in any dark moments, there's always light. There's always positives happening. And for me, it's really important to highlight those moments too, because whether it's cancer, whether it's something else, we don't know how much time we're really guaranteed on this earth. And it's, what are we doing with that time? How are we making the most of it? And there's there's beautiful things that are happening on a daily basis. And if we choose to focus on that, it changes how you think, it changes how you feel, and as a result, it changes your whole perception on the situation, even though it's like, nobody wants to be in this situation. It's like, what can I do to make the most out of it? So that's part of my goal. Mindset is huge. I've had to work incredibly hard on that. And cancer was definitely the chapter in my life that pushed me to solidify that mindset and to really understand that, it matters what you're feeding your mind, and it will, as a result, affect how you're feeling. And I think that, we're already feeling really crappy going through treatment. So how can we make that a little bit easier on ourselves? And if I can help others through that journey, that's my goal. And we all have a story. And for the longest time, I started writing. I wanted to write this book, and then I stopped. And I told myself, like, everybody has a story. Why would people want to listen to my story? But eventually I realized that it's not a matter of putting my story on a pedestal. It's using my story to help other people tap into their story and realize that when you speak up based on your situation and what you're going through, you're allowing other people to do the same. You're building that bridge, that connection. And I'll give you guys maybe an example, because I went to an event this week and we were doing a round circle. Everybody was kind of, explaining why they were at this event, and it was a personal development event. And I mentioned, I'm a two-time ovarian cancer survivor and I'm an author. And the woman sitting next to me, she started crying and she said, I wasn't going to say this, but I just finished my treatments for breast cancer. And she's like, you allowed me to be able to open up about that. And I felt safe to do that in that environment. So, I wanted to share that piece with you because I think we all have an incredible story. Each of you do, and it's you guys are powerhouses to be able to live through it and to also, be able to share that with other people, give them a glimpse of what you're living through, because I think people truly appreciate that. It builds that bridge of compassion, and you're a light in the darkness. Like, you really do inspire people with what you're going through, and I think hope is such an incredible thing that people hold on to. And this world needs it now more than ever, cancer or no cancer, right? So I really, I bow to you guys because I know you're going through it right now too. Some of you are in the treatment phase right now, and I've been there. And even though it seems like a long time ago, it also feels like just yesterday that I was through that. So I'm praying for all of you, and like I said, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. Um, But my main goal with all this was with regards to taking back your power is, that whole concept of choice is that we don't choose what happens to us, but we can choose our thoughts and we can choose how we want to feel. And I think that ultimately puts you back in a driver's seat when in a world where, we're constantly being told by people in white coats, like what you're supposed to do. It can be very how can I say this? Like you feel like you lose your power through that, right? You feel like you lose your voice, that you're kind of, just going based on how things should be done, but you still have options that are available to you. And I do want to give a shout out to Kristen. I know you're oncology nurse, and oncology nurses hold such a special place for me in my heart because they did the most in terms of being there, and the work that you guys do is not easy. It's definitely not something that I could do, I think, and I really admired my gynae onc team was there for me morning to night, and yeah, it's not an easy job, and we need you guys more than ever. So thank you for that, Mark. That was my spiel. I don't know if you had questions or you wanted me to keep going, or if you want me to tap into specific topics.
Let's talk more about the importance of your focus, of your mindset, and you know, let's kind of go back and talk about uh, the decision that you made to be positive moving forward in your cancer journey.
Yeah, so that was a, I would say, daily, I don't want to say struggle, but it's something that I had to remind myself on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. I think naturally I've always been, I don't want to say more on the pessimistic side. I've just gravitated more towards, oh, like fear, anxiety. And I've had bouts of depression in the past, which obviously didn't help when you're going through something such as cancer. But to be able to make a choice every single day or multiple times a day to say, okay, I recognize that my mindset right now is not serving me. It's actually causing me more harm. I'm not feeling good. I'm going to make a different choice. And it often started with little things. It's not a drastic change. It's not something that you decide one moment and then it's like you have a positive mindset for the rest of your life. I think it's like very similar to going to the gym, right? It's you have to go and you have to build that muscle and you have to do a little bit and then gradually you do a bit more. And if you do it consistently enough, it becomes part of who you are. And it's the same with building a positive mindset. You take those baby steps. So for me, it started with gratitude, right? It's, what are three things that I can be grateful for today? That is not even linked to cancer. Sometimes, I was so consumed by cancer that I was like, I need to remind myself that there's a life outside of this. This is just, an aspect of my life. It's not my entire life right now. And that just gave me the bigger picture, to bring me back. And eventually, once you build that, it gives you that resilience to basically go through your harder moments, right? It's what you do on your good days that truly prepare you for your harder days. I'm a strong believer in that. But you're definitely going to get tested on your hard days, and you're going to fall back to that level of practice that you've had prior to that. So for me, I did a lot of sports also growing up. So, I would say I'm a very incredibly disciplined individual. So when I decide that I'm going to do something, I do it regardless of how I'm feeling in that moment. And once you build that habit, eventually the rest will follow through.
I want to help answer a question that Kristen asked me last night, and I told her at that time, she asked me how I did it. And I said, that's a really lengthy answer to this. And basically, what I did was, what most people do is they uh, go to their doctor or their oncologist and they say, hey, treat me. And whatever you do, that's what I'm going to do. That's not the approach that I took. And I know you took a similar approach to it, Diana. I mean, what I've done in my personal cancer journey, and I highly suggest that each and every person, no matter what they're going through, make their cancer journey their own. Me personally, what I did was I didn't just accept one set of treatments. I wanted to treat my whole being. And so it's very, very complex. Cancer is very, very, very complex. And, there's so many facets to it, and most of which are not addressed that really need to be addressed. So would you like to talk about that, Diana?
Absolutely. Um, Thanks, Mark. It's like you said, cancer is not just when you're treating cancer, you're treating basically just one aspect of the whole being, right? It's like what is the source of the cancer too? Like we don't really talk about that in Western medicine. It's like where, yes, we could look at genetically, are we predisposed to certain types of cancers? But I think that if you look at the individual holistically, yes, there's a physical aspect, there's a mental aspect. As much as what you're feeding your body is, affecting you physically, what you're feeding your mind is also affecting you physically. And to give you guys an example is, I was going every day for chemotherapy to the hospital at one point, and I would get a week off and then go back for a week. And the week that I would go in on the Sunday night, I would walk into the hospital and immediately I would start vomiting. And I hadn't received chemotherapy. I hadn't been sick for the whole week. I was feeling great. But as soon as I put foot in the hospital, it was it was a mental reaction where my body knew the environment, the smell, everything just triggered that physical response in my body. That's how strong your mind is. That's the programming of your mind, right? And that was the moment where I was like, oh my goodness, like I am causing this to myself in this moment in time, with the fear and the stress and the association. And it was week after week until the nurse told me, actually, she's like, it's anticipatory anxiety. It's not, it has nothing to do with the chemotherapy. Like you haven't had chemotherapy. So it just goes to show that how everything is interconnected, right? So if your mind is, if you're thinking certain things, it's going to eventually, over time, it's going to compound and it's going to affect you physically as well. I'm also a strong believer in emotional responses as well. So a lot of experiences that we live in the past, if we don't process those emotions at the time, we carry those through our life. Whether we're actively aware of it or not, those emotions, you carry it inside you. And over time, if you do not address them, they will come back and they will come out in a different shape and form, and you'll have no choice to address it at that point. So I've done a lot of work with regards to emotional traumas as well. Actually, in the book, it's a guide, right? So I put a lot of exercises in there because I want the reader to really dig deep, in terms of like physical health, in terms of mental health, in terms of emotional health, doing some shadow work, like what are my triggers? What are certain things? What are some of my fears? Let me go so deep within, and once you do that, you realize that you're healing your body from the inside out on different aspects, different levels. And when you do it holistically like that, you start to notice that, wow, I do feel better. It's not I just take a pill and then everything's okay for an hour. It's like, no, I'm actually, setting that foundation where on a day to day, I just feel like I am truly healing. And there's also the spiritual aspect, like which was really important for me too, right? It's whether you believe in a greater power or not, it brought me a lot of comfort, especially in that time. And it also brought me community, because it allowed me to connect with different people that were going through hardship, that were going through difficulties. And when you surround yourself by people who are having these discussions, it elevates you. I think there's healing to be said in a community, that when you're isolated, it can feel, you could be your own worst enemy in that. So yeah, healing is for me is definitely multidimensional. And I'm a strong believer in Western medicine as well. Like it saved my life. Surgery saved my life. That and the fact that they were able to take the tumor out within a week of finding out, and it was the size of a mini football. I needed that. I needed that out of my body, right? And the chemotherapy, obviously. But I knew that my healing didn't end there. I knew that if, and I had a reoccurrence. So when my cancer came back, I was like, well, I did all the treatment, everything should be fine now. And it wasn't. So I was like, what is it that I need to change? Because I cannot go back to living a life like I was before. That's what got me here in the first place. So, what is it that I need to do? Um, and that's kind of how I got to the place that I am now, where I really look at healing from a multidimensional approach.
Let's thank you for that, Diana. You covered that really well. Uh, what about have you, and I didn't ask, in fact, let me interject this at this time. For those of you who would like to see more in-depth conversation with Diana, I did a three-part interview series on my channel, To Be Your Own Hero, and she stayed with me for three parts, did a phenomenal job of sharing. Have you done anything with your diet, and if so, what did that include?
My diet, yeah. So I would say that even prior to cancer, because I was very active, I was very health conscious. And that's part of the reason why I was so surprised when I got the cancer diagnosis, because in my mind, I said, I did everything right. I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm eating well, I had a well-balanced diet, and I was exercising. So for me, it was really confusing because I didn't know what to do at that point. I was like, I've been doing everything that I was supposed to do. But I did make some changes, definitely. I really got into juicing was important for me because again, I did a lot of reading, and that was something that aligned with me. And also when I was going through treatment, I was having a really difficult time just with water and certain foods. So, the treatments that you receive, and some of you could probably speak to this, is that it changes your taste buds. Things started tasting metallic. I couldn't drink water. So it's really I really went towards juicing was important, high protein, high fat, just because the chemotherapy. I was not a big girl to begin with, and they told me, once you're going to start chemo, and it was an aggressive type of chemo in the sense that it was almost guaranteed that I was going to be sick, which I was. So I needed to make sure that I was getting the calorie intake to give me the strength to be able to fight it, right? So when I was actually going through treatment, I was more worried about the calorie intake and the protein intake. And then after the treatment was done, that's when I really cleansed my body. So I was really conscious about what I was putting in my body because I had put all these toxins in, right? So now it was like, okay, I need to recreate my microbiome and like the probiotics and all this stuff. You have to rebuild that. So I really paid a lot of attention to that. There's so much information out there. It can be extremely overwhelming. And I think I'm very intuitive. Like I've learned to listen to my body. I've done certain diets if you want, or have eaten certain foods that are supposed to be superfoods, but they just don't align with my body. They don't make me feel good. And I've had to recognize that to be like my body, like for example, quinoa, really healthy food, high protein. I'm like, my body can't take it. It can't break it down, and it makes me actually really sick. So I'm like, you know what? That's not going to be a go-to food for me, for example. So it's also your body is constantly speaking to you. It's always giving you signs. And I think over time, we might have shut those signs down. We just go based on what we're told is supposed to be good for us. But listen to what your body is telling you through that. And don't be afraid to step outside the box and try different things. And give yourself enough time, I think, too. When it comes to diet, it's not an immediate change, right? It's not like a quick pill. You take it and you feel good within an hour. It's over time that your body is going to thank you for the fuel that you're putting in it.
Yeah, my approach is very similar, and thank you for sharing that, Diana. When I started my cancer journey, I had been a vegan for 10 years, which is quote unquote like supposedly the best diet that you have. But everybody is different. Everybody has, a different set of circumstances. What one diet will work for one person may not work for another person.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to find what works for you as an individual because it may not what works for Diana, what works for me, what works for Lahia or whoever may not work for you. I mean, there's certain things. A gentleman who spoke several weeks ago, Mike Starks, he's gone to a plant-based diet, uh, and it's working for him because he said every time he eats meat, he has something flare up and he doesn't feel good. So you have to adjust. Actually, it's a continual adjustment as you move forward. I mean, even today, my main core of things stays the same, but the peripheral things, I'm always adjusting. I'm always looking for, different solutions, and I'm always open to hearing different things. And so it's a constant process of evolvement through this process, and be open-minded. Uh, I've used myself as a guinea pig. I just keep trying things, and some things work, some things don't. And it's just a matter of being open-minded to try different things. And, you mentioned, things that you've done. I mean, among the things that I've done are hypnotherapy, acupuncture. Uh, another thing that's very important is to forgive people. I mean, because you want to release all of this emotional
Mhm.
garbage that's inside of you, and you know, and, and forgiving people in your life is an important thing. And all these things that as if in and of itself may not be significant, but when you put all the pieces together, then it is significant. So would you like to talk more about that, Diana?
Yeah, I love that, Mark. Forgiveness is huge. I think that was um, one of my biggest challenges. And even until today, I would say, it's not the forgiveness piece, it's the letting go piece, the surrender, that ultimate surrender. And I think, as someone who's suffered from anxiety for years, it's all based on control and controlling an outcome. And when you're in something such as cancer, like you have zero control, right? It's really is surrendering, letting go and having that release, like you said, because, when you carry that tension, whether you feel it immediately or not, like you are harming yourself. It's like holding on to a tight knife and then like holding on tighter and tighter, hoping that, things are gonna be okay, but it's like you're really just causing yourself more harm. So the letting go piece and letting go, this was the biggest lesson for me, and I hope maybe this helps somebody that's struggling with letting go, is that when you let go, it doesn't mean that you're giving up. Okay. And that was the thing for me. I'm like, I'm a fighter, I'm gonna keep going. When you let go, is that you're still fighting, you're giving everything that you got, but you're letting go of the outcome that you expect. You detach from the outcome. So you focus on what you can do in the immediate present. What are the action steps? Like, what can I do for me that is within my control? I'm going to do that. And whatever happens after that, I'm just going to trust. And it's that trust piece, right? It's probably the hardest part because you can't see it and you're going into it and you're like, I'm just gonna, let this go, and whatever will be, is it can be extremely difficult. And I think for me, it was that spirituality piece, working on that aspect of it that brought me the comfort to allow me to let go, and not know everything and trust that, I got here somehow. Somebody's, like, there's a power out there that's really supporting me. And the universe always has my back in some way, shape, or form. And however that looks, right? And I think that once you trust in that, you allow yourself for the miracles in life, because you suddenly open yourself up to options that were outside of what you could even imagine. Um, so yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Mark. That was a big piece for me, and I hope that it can help others as well, through that journey.
What we'd like to do, let's open it up for any questions or input for our speaker, Diana? Anybody have anything they'd like to add? Otherwise, I have more that I could ask her. And anybody, you could either raise your hand. There's a an option to raise your hand. You can unmute yourself, ask the question. Anybody have a question? Okay, go ahead, Lihia.
Oh, yes, I just would like to add something about forgiveness. And I was thinking when you were talking about that, when we think about forgiving, we should start with ourselves. And I think that is very important, right? Because we think about other situations that are outside of us, but
Mhm.
forgiving ourselves, embracing ourselves, and be more compassionate with ourselves, because sometimes we are so, we are asking ourselves that everything should be perfect, and
Yeah.
it is not like that. Sometimes it is more stressful for us. So I think this process should start with ourselves. I just wanted to add that because I mean, I learned all these things with my mom, so I think it's very important.
It is very important. Thank you for adding that because you're absolutely right. It starts with that piece where it's you, right? And I think it's the hardest piece as well too is to truly to a
Yeah,
place where you can forgive yourself. I think we put so much expectation on ourselves and we blame ourselves and we carry guilt. So yeah, it's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you for adding that.
I,
You're
I,
welcome.
thank you for bringing that up, Lihia. That's a great point because I'm going to throw something in there that goes along with it. I think a lot of people, when they are diagnosed with cancer, right away, it's like, why me? You
Mhm.
know, what did I
Hmm.
do?
Exactly.
And then they're looking for blame, somebody, something or somebody to blame. And most of the time they start blaming themselves. What did I do? And so talk about that aspect, Diana, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, sorry. My computer. Okay. Sorry, Mark, what was the question? Sorry, I got distracted.
No, no problem. Talk about, uh, you know, when people are first diagnosed with cancer, how they start
Yes.
blame, they're looking for
Hmm.
somebody to blame.
Yes, yes.
What did I do wrong?
Hmm.
Why me? Why is me?
Yeah,
Uh, let's talk about that because I think that's a very important thing.
it is. And I guilty, like I've definitely I went through that. Like that, getting a cancer diagnosis, like going through the stages of grief, right? For, the anger, the denial, all of that, it has to come out. And our brain again rationalizes it. We try to make sense. We try to connect the dots, and it's like, how did I get to this point? And that was exactly the way that I was thinking. I was like, I did everything right. So like, why am I here? Like, why did I get to this point? And that's where that blaming comes in, I think. And you start blaming yourself for the situation that you're in. And it goes back to, changing that narrative. Like, this is the situation that you're in, but what if you ask yourself, well, why not me? Like it could be me, it could be somebody else. Like, yes, this is my reality, unfortunately, that I'm in, and I'm allowed to be angry. I think sometimes, we restrict ourselves from feeling our emotions as well. I think it's really important to feel those emotions and to then process it as well, to say that, okay, is this emotion right now serving me? Is this blame, serving me? Is me questioning how I got here serving me? Like, it's not going to change the fact that I'm here right now, right? You have to build to get to that point. But once you get there, that's where you can start healing and really, that acceptance piece when it comes to your cancer journey, the hardest piece, right? I think is getting to that point where you accept the diagnosis that you've received. But it's important to allow yourself to go through the emotions. I would be more concerned if somebody was just like, okay, yeah, it's like you have to feel
Hmm.
that. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to, cry. And I think that. as speaking about emotions and all that as well too, I talk a lot about, going into survival mode because there's a time where you do have to go into survival mode. Like there are certain steps that need to be taken and immediately, right? So it's like you got to go through surgery, you got to go through chemotherapy. Sometimes you don't have time to process what is actually happening and you need to be on autopilot, which is what I did for several months. But I knew that as soon as that survival mode would end, it's like now I have to go back and process all that's happened and like make sense of that and go through the emotions. So as I was entering, survivorship, my hair was starting to grow back. I was getting my eyebrows. Like people were like, oh, you're back to your normal life. And on the outside, it looked like, yes, I'm healed and I'm getting back to my day to day, going back to work. But the reality is that I hadn't processed anything that had happened, and I was living those emotions after the fact. So I looked like I was getting better on the outside, but the healing internally was just starting. But I had to go through it. I had to go through the crying phase. I had to go through the anger phase. And initially, it would come out in situations. I'll just use a quick example. I was going through fertility treatments. It was ovarian cancer. I was, at a baby shower. And there was an argument about the color of the balloons, right? And I was getting so emotional because I hadn't processed the fact that, like, I was grieving the fact that, maybe I'll never be able to have a child. And, I just lashed out, like, does it really matter the color of the balloons? And in that moment, I realized,
Mhm.
like, oh, I haven't processed, my emotions through this. And it's okay to be angry. Like, I shouldn't be reacting necessarily this way, at a baby shower. But it made me definitely reflect on, okay, the emotional side of it. You need to allow yourself to feel and to be sad and to be angry and to really just speak to other people about it too. I think I did feel alone in it, and as a result, I wanted to appear normal for everybody. So I would always, come off strong and be like, I'm good, but I wasn't okay. And I think when you can be vulnerable and you can tell people where you're at, you'll see there's such a massive support out there, and it allows other people to share their story with you, and you realize, oh, I'm not in this alone. Like other people are also struggling in those moments in different ways. So, yeah, big lessons in terms of, blaming yourself and then also understanding where that comes from. So, my hope is that each of you can forgive yourselves in those moments where you feel like, oh, I could have done better. It's like, yeah, we have those moments and you will do better next time. And you've recognized it, right? You're here, you're trying, and that's all you can ask of yourself in that moment.
Thank you, Diana. What I'd like to do is stop the recording, but we'll still take a few questions and then we'll close out the session. So I'm gonna say thank you everyone for joining us for the Cancer Conquering community, and thank you, Diana, for sharing your wisdom and your experiences. And we will see you in a couple of weeks on this channel, Cancer Conquering Community. Thank you so much. Please subscribe, make a comment in the comment section, and like the video. And we will see you next time. Have a great week. Thank you.